Hey there, welcome into the Maybe I'm the Crazy One podcast, and I'm your host, Alex Chandler. Never being one to share a take with anyone that I know, I figure I'd start taking down my ideas and sharing them with you here. Every week, we will explore new parts of the sports world, and I'll give you my viewpoints. Maybe I'm a genius, or maybe I'm just crazy. Tune in with me and find out for yourself. What up, guys, and welcome in. It is episode 9 of Maybe I'm the Crazy One podcast. I'm your host, Alex Chandler. Man, we're going to have a great show for you today. Real quick, if you haven't been able to catch up on the show from earlier this week, go check out episode 8, streaming in all places that you would find your podcasts, whether it's YouTube, Google, Apple, Spotify, wherever. We got you covered. Second note, of course, make sure that you like, review, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. We are on our way to trying to get to our next milestone, and we need your help to do so. So thank you, everyone who is supporting the show. We could not do this without you. Couple of show announcements real quick. I did get a date for us on Monday, August 1st. KC Mito is doing his giveaway. That is Monday, August 1st. And we're going to be joining him on his stream. So go ahead and tune in with us there as we discuss some sports. We basically give you a free episode of Maybe I'm the Crazy One podcast, or a special episode edition, whatever you want to call it. Come join us. KC-M-I-T-O. KC Mito. And lastly, today's format is going to change. I know we discussed that we were going to be doing a debate. Unfortunately, my debate partner is sick, and so we are unable to debate this week. We will potentially try to do it again next week. However, I will have to see what we can get accomplished. But today is really going to be all about a football show. The NBA is really slowing down now. Until training camp, there's probably going to be one or two stories, and so we'll hit on some NBA stuff as we go, and I know we've branded ourselves as an NBA, NFL, MLS podcast. Right now, there's not going to be a whole lot of the NBA stuff. Today, we're going to focus in on a lot of the NFL stuff. Kyler Murray signed his contract last week, and then promptly spent the entire week dealing with some criticisms because of language in the contract. DK Metcalf re-signed with the Seahawks this week. We might talk some of that a little bit. It's something that we said was going to happen, and so we are excited to see that happen. We'll take a break from talking NFL for just a second while we sneak down back into college football. I want to revisit my realignment strategy, kind of explain what I would do with the scheduling now that I've thought it out a little bit further, and where I think college football really could go from here. And then we'll finish up with what we've finished all of our traditional episodes with for the last few weeks. And that's going to be our breakdown of one of the divisions in the NFL. Today, we're going to find out if the Rams are going to go back-to-back, at least in their division. So with all that being said, I guess we're starting in the NFC West today. Because we got a couple things to talk about in terms of contracts. We got two new multi-million-dollar men. One with Kyler Murray being a 5-year, $230 million guaranteed deal that he signed at the end of last week. And then you got DK Metcalf yesterday, or 2 days ago maybe, at this point, or depending on when you listen to it, at the end of last week, quote unquote. So 2 weeks ago for Kyler, 1 week ago for DK at this point. DK signed a 3-year, $72 million deal, which I think is super intriguing. But we can't even start to talk about DK's deal because some other things happened this week with Kyler Murray's contract. On Monday, an addendum was released with Kyler's contract that showed that the team had added a 4-hour-a-week independent study clause for the quarterback. Now, that's typically not a big deal. Most of your quarterbacks are going to work 4 hours a day, let alone 4 hours a week. But they had to add it in there, and it's just 4 hours a week. But the important stipulation in the contract is that you can't be second screening, which if you don't know what that is, that means that you're watching something while doing something else, essentially having two screens in front of you. So basically he had to be logged into his team iPad, reviewing film, going over, his previous film, the team's film that's coming up, whatever it may be, preparing for game study for at least 4 hours a week. This is not a typical term in a contract. It's typically not in there that a player is going to study for X amount of minutes, X amount of hours, whatever it may be, whether it's a day, week, month, year, whatever it is. It's not a normal thing. So why did we need to add it to Kyler's contract, Arizona? Is it because he's unreliable? Is it because you don't trust him? And then if you don't trust him, why are you paying him $230 million over the next 5 years? Here's the thing. I think Kyler deserved the money. Now, do I think he deserved to be the highest paid quarterback on a per year average? No, I don't think that. But I think Kyler is a good quarterback. He's in that same tier that everybody's pissed off at me about that can't win a Super Bowl this year but are good quarterbacks. He's right in the middle of it. You have Russell at the front of it. You have Baker at the back of it. Kyler's somewhere right there in the middle. So Kyler's a good quarterback. I think he can play well and continue to play well in this league over the course of this contract. So I don't think the contract itself is bad, but why you got to add that kind of language in there, guys? And Kyler, why do you have to agree to it? But it gets more bizarre. Because then it's reported after everybody has came out and said, dude, why do you need this in there? Like, is Kyler not studying on his own? Is he not trying to be a great player and do what all the other great players have done in history? And that's basically study film all the time. And so then it was released that both it was important to the Cardinals and to Kyler that this was in the contract. What? I'm sorry. If you've never signed a contract in real life before, do you typically put more clauses in the contract that can then void your deal? Especially arbitrary and bullshit clauses like studying for 4 hours a week? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And so that might have been Kyler trying to save face with the Cardinals. I don't know. But good God, guys. Like, that's... what is that? It doesn't make any sense why Kyler would want this in the contract. And the only reason the Cardinals want it in the contract is if you have belief that he's not doing the work and you're afraid that you're going to need an out in the contract. Because they can void the contract. The entire guarantee is on the contract. $60 million. They can void those without any warning if they somehow can prove that he wasn't doing independent study without second screens. So then Kyler comes out and throws a impromptu press conference and basically admonishes everybody for saying, hey, like, did you not think that I got here by doing the work? Which obviously you did, Kyler. Obviously you got here from doing the work. But you know what else is obvious? When there's a new Call of Duty game that comes out and you check the release date and then look at your completion percentage afterwards. Which really might have, there's been some investigative studying. It might be from a tweet that came out and said, hey, Kyler is less efficient both in fantasy, both as an overall and as an overall player after Call of Duty's new game releases at the end of the year every year the last 3 years. And you can look it up yourself. It's pretty funny. He basically averages less than 3 points a game less in fantasy, but his completion percentage drops like something like 5 or 6%. It was really wild, and it's after every single Call of Duty game in the last 3 years. Again, that's not necessarily to say that he's doing anything wrong. He may be doing the exact same thing that he's been doing the entire time. What that does say is that the schedule might be getting harder, and you don't need to do what you've been doing the entire time. The game might be getting more challenging because you're losing good players, you're having to work and overcompensate, you may be hurt yourself, So maybe we should put more effort into being a football player and less into being a COD player. Which, again, there's nothing wrong with COD. It's not the COD thing. It's not a gaming thing. It's not even a Kyler thing. This is all about the Cardinals. The Cardinals made Kyler look like an asshole. The Cardinals made Kyler look like an idiot. And so on Friday, they came out and said, hey, we're gonna scrap the addendum. Or Thursday, sorry. We're going to scrap the addendum. It's causing too much of a distraction. Of course it is. It's been a distraction since day one. And honestly, if you want to argue, it was a distraction before you put it into the contract. Because it's literally saying you have to study without distractions. You're saying distractions are causing this distractive clause? That's double jeopardy, I believe. Probably not. But guys, don't be idiots. You either trust the man or not. You can't play these games at the most important position on a football team. If you don't have a good quarterback, at least a serviceable quarterback, you cannot win. It's just been proven in fact. Even when Big Ben was hurt, they had serviceable backups. Well, one, and then they had Duck Hodges. And that's not a drive-by at Duck. Duck, if you're listening, you did well for what you got, buddy. But come on. So, I'm happy for Kyler. I'm glad that it's out of his contract now. But once we got out of this whole Kyler Murray situation, then we got into the DK deal. And then DK signed a new deal for 3 years, $72 million. And it had the highest signing bonus ever for a wide receiver, I believe is what it said, at $30 million. Or it might be percentage, but either way. But it was $30 million guaranteed at signing, which was massive for him. It's $42 million over the next 3 years, basically $14 a year annual salary. That's a pretty good deal for him. On top of that, he's going to be able to become a free agent again at age 27. And it's also a very movable contract at that point. All your dead money is going to be in the first couple of years, major money. And so say this year doesn't go well, you could potentially trade DK at the end of this year still, because it is a short contract, because it's not going to carry a ton of dead weight outside of this first and second year. You could carry the dead weight for year 2, spread it out through year 3, 4, and 5 if you really needed to, and move off of DK if he wants to move. So this is a great deal for everybody. He becomes a free agent again at 27. The Seahawks get to maintain a good young wide receiver, see if Drew Lock actually has what it takes to be an NFL quarterback, or if Geno Smith, after 7 years in the league, will be a good quarterback in the league too. Whichever way it works. Don't have faith in either one of them working. It also means that they could say, hey, DK, look, just give us next year, again, with a new quarterback, and let's see if we're any better. And if they're not, then they can absolutely cut him or trade him. Either way, you can get out of that contract really easily after year 2. No problems. So ultimately, I think it's a great deal. What I really wanted to talk about was how a few weeks back, when we talked about DK in trades, I said, I don't think DK is going to be traded, but I think he will potentially want to be traded by the end of the season. And it wouldn't be surprising if he was traded, but I do expect him and the Seahawks to come to a deal. And here we are. And so let's put another point on the board for us, because we hit that one right on the nail. And you can tell he hit it on the nail too, because it is a shortened contract. You've seen players do a lot of extensions recently. It's 4 years, 5 years, 5 years, 4 years. Patrick's was 10. I imagine Lamar's might be somewhere in the 7 to 8 variety, honestly. Just so he can make more money, but they can spread the costs out once he's finally got his agreement. So it's odd when you see a longer term contract, especially for a young player. You would want to try to sign them for as long as you could. I mean, hell, even Tyreek's extension was 4 years, 100 million, and he was on the last year of his deal. DK's on the last year of his deal and got this new deal to go over it, so that's nice. And then you have Stephon Diggs, whose deal was a 2-year extension, but he already had 2 years, so that gave him 4. Like, there's a lot of players that got extensions or money movement in the offseason, and it was more predicated around 4 and 5 year deals. And a lot of these deals are typically predicated on 4 and 5 year deals. So the fact that DK was able to finagle a 3-year deal, that's going to set him up himself for a nice payday here when he's 27. And if he's going to take kind of like the LeBron James approach where he's signing 1-year contracts, or at least shortened term contracts, he might make a bunch of money in this league if he can maintain his skill and maintain his ability. So we'll see what DK is able to provide to everybody this year now that he's been paid. That's always the one concern I have. Money doesn't make you less of who you are. It makes you more of who you are. And so is DK going to continue to be this excellent player, or is he going to take a step back? We'll see. I'm not 100% certain. There is a reason that he went in the second round. Whether it's a bullshit reason or not, you can have that debate and argument, but there is a reason. It was because he was unpolished. It was because there were some question marks about his commitment to the game. And so it's on the board that money changes the way his performance is, but ultimately I like DK. I think DK is an excellent player. I think we'll see DK perform relatively well, for his circumstance. If he comes out with more than 900 yards this year, I think he's done an exceptional job, because I'm not sure if Drew Lock and Geno Smith can throw for more than 1,900 yards. So it begs the question, why did the Seahawks do this? Unless they know something we don't. Maybe they think they can be viable in an NFC West that's filled with the Rams and the 49ers and the Cardinals, who all made the playoffs last year, all made NFC championship games. Not all, sorry. 2 of them made NFC championship games. Multiple over the last 5 years, actually. Yet the Seahawks have 1 playoff win since 2015. And they have 0 playoff wins in round 2 since 2015. And that was with Russell Wilson. So you expect DK Metcalf to be your savior somehow when Russ had DK, and now he's going to be working with Drew Lock or Geno Smith? Nah. I don't want to spoil the NFC West rankings later, but I'm not really high on the Seahawks. I gotta be honest. So, it is what it is. We'll see what happens. I like DK. I hope he gets to have the career he deserves to have, and this money doesn't change him for the worse. Another thing that I don't hope changes for the worst is college football. And as we talked about a few shows before, I think that while a lot of people believe we're going to a 2-conference system, with the Big Ten and the SEC being the 2 big systems that we have, I think we should go to a 4-conference system and allow each conference to have either 33 or 32 teams, depending on the conference. You can give the SEC and the Big Ten the 2 big deals. And then you would have basically the Midwest and West in one, and then you would have the East in one, with a caveat of every conference and division, sorry, not division, just conference, would have a Texas team, a California team, and a Florida team, because those are recruiting hotspots and allows you to do more from there. And so each conference would have the same regulatory standards in terms of where they have action, what they can get themselves into, whatever it may be. And those states typically have pretty good schools that you can do that with as well. I mean, California has Cal, Stanford, UCLA, USC. So there's 4 right there. Texas has Texas, Baylor, Texas A&M, Houston, TCU, Texas Tech. There's 6 Division I schools. Florida has Florida, Florida State, Miami, UCF, USF, FIU now with Lane Kiffin, or when he was there, rather. They've maintained their standard a little bit. So, I mean, they're a pretty good school too. So, I mean, there's 5, 6 there as well that we could use. So, with that being said, what you do is you separate these divisions, or these conferences, into just 4 separate conferences. They include all 130 teams from Division I football. And what you do is you say, hey guys, you can pick one team from the other 3 conferences to play a game against week 1. From that point on, you're going to play 10 divisional games, or conference games, sorry. You're going to play 10 conference games, and we may separate them into divisions, and so you may play divisional opponents more than you play some of the other teams. However, you have the ability to play these other 32 teams, or 31 teams if you're in the 32-team conference, every year. So you play those 10 games, those are your games, then you're done. The top 4 teams from each conference will then be in a conference playoff. And so those 4 teams would play those 2 games, and then once they play their 2 games and you have a conference champion, then you would move them into the college football playoff, the National College Football Playoff. And each conference champion is in their respective area inside of the bracket. Now, you don't have anybody selecting these teams to be in the playoff, but you do still have the playoff committee, like I said before, because you still need to rank the team. So here's your first team versus your 4 team, and your 2 versus your 3. But outside of that, there's no questions about who the best team is, who should have been there. They've all earned their way there, and then there's a direct path. What that also does is it tells the Power 5 schools, hey, there's no longer a Power 5, or a Group of 5 schools, sorry. It also tells the Group of 5 schools, hey, we value your ability to do this. So we're going to give you a direct route. We're going to give you a direct route to getting into the national championship game. You just got to run your schedule. Additionally, that doesn't add any additional games. Last year, Georgia played 15 games, went 15-0. In this model, you play 11 regular season games, 2 quote-unquote postseason games, and then 2 additional if you're winning the title. And so you're still playing only 15 games. It also then allows you to build out more of these really exciting games. Bill the non-conference games. I mean, how awesome would it be to say, hey, Alabama, you have all these other teams in your division now, in your conference, including like a Clemson maybe. You can play Clemson every year. Or for like Ohio State, right? What if we, instead of moving Cincinnati to the Big 12, they were then just moved into the Big 10, and then you get Cincinnati, Ohio State every year? That'd be fun. But then it makes even more excitement for the non-conference games, because you're more than likely going to be playing a high-level team at some point in time. And then additionally, playoff games are also way more exciting, way more profitable, way more everything than a regular season game is. And so from the school's perspective in terms of funding, it's going to be better too. Now, you still have your regular bowl stuff. And so if you don't win we have to adjust those. And so instead of 6 wins, it may be 5 wins. But you're still going to have regular bowls. But, we don't really care about those bowls half the time anyway. Sure, we get some good games. Every once in a while, there's a good non-New Year's bowl game, New Year's Day bowl game, or a game after the, New Year's Day, because sometimes those national championships are played multiple weeks out. But there's not that allure, really honestly. I don't want to see a bowl game between 2 teams where it's like 49-16. FIU versus Southern Miss doesn't move me. but it might. Seeing these teams, and so instead of having, as it is for bowl games now, you're going to have Big 12 runner-up number 6 versus Pac-12 runner-up number 6 or number 7 or whatever it may be. That's not a thing anymore. Now it's West versus North 1 or 2 and 3. West versus North 4 and 7. We're going to have a lot more of those interconference matchups for bowl games that are more exciting, more titillating, because there's just not as much spread across. And so the cream of the crop is going to be at the top for all of these divisions. And so when you get down to bowl game number 15, 16, instead of having two teams that you've literally watched 0 minutes of football on, your team might have actually played them this year. And so with that, I think we're missing a huge opportunity with college sports to make it more productive, to make it more exciting. And this is also the right way to do it, in my opinion. I mean, you can look at the success of college basketball conference tournaments. And I know every team is in those tournaments typically. And so there's some slight differences, but football is one of those sports as well that, like, by 10 or 11 games, you know who the better team is. 10 or 11 games in basketball, well, hell, in an NBA season, that's barely an eighth of a season. In college basketball, it's a third of the season. In football, it's 5/7 of the season. So, it makes a lot more sense for college football not to have everybody in that tournament, but still, I understand the desire, the need, the want to say, hey, my team should have had this chance at the national championship game, and they didn't get it because of the committee. Well, the committee is removed from this. This is all about your team. Is your team better than this team? No? Okay. Well, you should have been better this year then. You no longer get to compete for a national title. Like, it's not that hard. But then you also can then have more trophies to hand out. If you want to give out trophies, you can have an all-conference playoff team. You can have, a whole myriad of things that you can do to make this more exciting, more marketable, then eventually more profitable, both for the TV stations as well as the schools. So that was my brief walk down the road of college football. Tell me if I'm crazy. I feel like I might be a little crazy on that one. Maybe having 30 teams per conference is too many, but you know what? I think I also might be a genius because it's going to lead to a lot of great football and closer product, by the way, that I believe to what the NFL provides, because it's going to create more parity per conference. And so thank you for allowing me to go down that walk with you into college football for a minute. Give us a little bit of a breather from the NFC West. But now we got to figure out, are the Rams going to go back-to-back in the division, let alone in the NFL? Or are they going to lose their crown in the NFC West? So as we have done with every episode, with every division, we're going to start with some key moves that each team made that are going to impact their schedule this year and, their seeding and everything like that. We'll also talk some important storylines. There's a lot going on in the NFC West, so we're going to have a little bit of additional time, I think, this week than we have in other typical weeks when breaking down the divisions. But luckily for us, it's been a really slow sports week, so we have a lot of extra time to do so today. All right, so with the storylines, the biggest one so far, I think, without a doubt, shoe in for number one story in the NFC West. DeAndre Hopkins getting suspended for using PEDs. Now, whether he was intentionally using the sauce or what, I don't want to get into that too much. That's neither here nor there. We weren't a part of those conversations. We weren't a part of those situations. So we really can't say too much about that. He's came out and said that he wasn't using it for those reasons. So, I mean, it is what it is. Things happen all the time. Courtney Ford for Sporting Kansas City got suspended 10 games for using a fat loss supplement. So, I mean, there's a lot of weird rules in terms of what can and can't be used in the NFL, NBA, MLS, all over sports. So I'm not going to criticize him too much for that. If he was using sauce, and it's going to be really interesting to see how good D-Hop is once he gets back and he's off the sauce, right? It's also going to be interesting to see if Arizona is even viable by the time D-Hop gets back from his suspension. Then, of course, we just got the brand new deal from Kyler. That's a huge deal in itself. Addendums aside, it's a great deal for him. It's a great deal for the team because it locks up their quarterback. Something that they really haven't had since Kurt Warner, Carson Palmer. So, good for them. But the bigger question, and we kind of touched on it earlier, is there a fall off at the end of seasons Cliff's fault? Or is it Kyler's fault? Because if it's Cliff's fault, that's fine. You can get rid of the coach and you're not in a bad spot. But if it's Kyler's fault, like if the Call of Duty stuff is real, and their end of year swoons have been Kyler's fault, oh boy. What did you just get yourself into, Arizona? But that's really the three storylines I'm following with them. Of course, they lost Chase Edmonds. They lost D-Hop for the first 6 weeks. They also lost Hassan Reddick, Kaiser White, Chase Edmonds, Christian Kirk, amongst other players. So they really haven't done a whole lot to increase their team as well, or add to their team. And so Hollywood Brown was added. They added some rookies. That's really all they did. So we'll see how well they do this year. I will give you their standings here in just a minute. In terms of Los Angeles, we're probably going to spend most of the time here. Because I think I need to preface what we're going to see inside of our standings with some really important storylines. So first off, the team is interchanging superstars for superstars. Last year they traded for Von Miller. This year they said, Von, you can go sign that massive deal with Buffalo. We're totally fine with that. Instead, we're going to go sign Bobby Wagner to a less per year contract than you. Okay. I like that move. I like that move a lot. Moves you up. But then, you should go forget Allen Robinson III. And you haven't re-signed OBJ yet. Granted, he's dealing with that injury, but still. You haven't re-signed him. And you traded Robert Woods, who's coming off of an ACL injury, which, good or bad, that's up to you. But, I mean, we didn't really even talk about Robert Woods when we talked about the AFC South. And I think that kind of tells you what I believe Robert Woods will be able to do this year. And so Allen Robinson may be better than Robert Woods would have been this year. But was he going to be better than what OBJ would be? I don't know. I mean, obviously with OBJ's injury, there's a lot of question marks to see if he's even going to come back the same player. But if he does, I don't think Allen Robinson's better than OBJ. Especially the way that he played last year. So, with all those being said, do I think the Rams can repeat? Division, we'll see. But for an NFL title, for a Super Bowl, absolutely. They have one of those top 6 quarterbacks, I think, that can win a Super Bowl. They have a top 5, 6 defense, especially with Bobby Wagner anchoring it in the middle, Jalen Ramsey being outside, and Aaron Donald being on the line. They have 3 superstar playmakers at all 3 levels of their defense. Incredible. If Cam Akers, that's going to be the important piece here. If Cam Akers can be a viable running back this year and not be hurt, the Rams may be better than they were last year. Like, truly, honestly, if they can have a run game that supports Sean McVay's passing offense, man, I don't give a fuck about Allen Robinson at that point. Honestly, it doesn't matter. You got Cooper Kupp. You got Cam Akers doing what you expect Cam Akers to do. You got Tyler Higbee at your tight end position. You got Allen Robinson III on the other side. You got Van Jefferson in your slot. You got a lot of different options and resources you could utilize as the Rams on offense. The only thing that matters is getting that running game moving. And so as long as the running game works, I think that the Rams work and they should have an opportunity to repeat as Super Bowl champions. So what's that say about the NFC runners-up last year in the 49ers? Well, we're going to find out if Trey Lance is about that life, guys. I mean, it came out this week that Kyle Shanahan directly stated that Jimmy Garoppolo has played his last down as a 49er, which means he's either going to be traded or he's going to be cut. Typically, when statements like that come out, it's usually just a cutting. And so this is Trey Lance's team. Can Trey Lance be that guy? Or is Trey Lance not that guy? And the 49ers made a massive mistake trading 3 first-round picks for him last year. I think it'll be interesting to see if Trey Lance is that guy. I personally, again, think he is that guy. I think he has what it takes. He may still be a year out from being a Super Bowl level quarterback, and I'm not going to put him in that tier of good quarterbacks yet, just because we have seen a very small sample size of Trey. But what we did see from Trey, it was really good. One of those plays that we saw from Trey was an 80-yard pass to Debo. And granted, a lot of it was Debo doing the work, but that's the question. Is Debo going to do the work this year? The question is, I don't know if he is. Like, truly, honestly, I don't think Debo's the malicious type to be like, oh, well, I'm not going to play if you're not going to pay me. But some of those business decisions might start kicking in this year unless there's a new contract involved. Which, again, as I've said previously, if you're not paying your quarterback, what the hell is stopping you from paying your wide receiver? Who potentially is the best wide receiver in the league. He's definitely one of the best X-Factor weapons in the league. So, like, why would you not pay him? Even if it's a DK deal where it's 3 years, $90 million, the guy deserves $30 million right now. And if you gave him a 3-year deal, $90 million, you could pay him right now. He still comes up for contract early in his career in theory, and you get to have him paired with Trey Lance. Then in 3 years, after you've won a Super Bowl with Trey Lance, with Debo, you can re-sign them both at the same time, and their impact is going to be far less. Additionally, you're going to have older players that fall off of contracts. I assume you're not going to be playing Trent Williams in 3 years because he's already old as it is. So, like, there's a lot of money to go around if you look for the money and you plan this effectively and efficiently. And I think John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan will figure it out, and the 49ers will be fine. They're going to be good this year. But if Lance struggles, is the defense good enough to keep them up? Now, I saw a report yesterday that Eric Armstead is going to be out multiple weeks to start the season. That doesn't move me on the 49ers defense. Their defense has been phenomenal. And except for the year that they lost like literally half of the defense, they've been pretty freaking good. They got Fred Warner. They got Nicky Bosa. The one thing that they're missing, the Rams have, is that lockdown outside cornerback. So they can figure that out. If they can maintain their defense and be a top 7 defense as they have been, I think they have a chance to be really good. And that's the end of the division, right? They're the only division with 3 teams. Oh crud! They still have 4. Oh shit! That's right. Seattle's still in that division. And that just kind of begs the question. I know we talked about DK earlier, and that was obviously a joke. But, like, that's what they got. They got DK and a bunch of kids. DK Tyler Lockett. Let me put some respect on that man's name. And a bunch of kids, guys. And you look down the list, and you got Hollywood Brown going to the Cardinals. You got Allen Robinson going to the Rams. San Francisco, they're adding a quarterback by using Trey Lance, but they got rid of Jimmy G and Raheem Mostert. They lost Russell Wilson. Nobody else on this list, maybe the Cardinals losing DeAndre Hopkins. They didn't lose a Hall of Fame talent. Now, I understand Von Miller left the Rams, went to a different team, but they signed another Hall of Fame talent, so it's a net neutral. They lost a Hall of Fame talent and added Drew Lock. As I told you earlier, I'm going to tell you again right now. I don't trust the Seattle Seahawks for a single second to beat a quality opponent. When I went down their list today of games, and I was saying they're going to win this game, they're going to lose this game, whatever it was, right? If the team had a inkling of being able to be good this year, they lost that game. It's because of Drew Lock. And if you try to tell me, well, it's not going to be Drew, it's going to be Geno, okay, that doesn't make it much better. So I think this is the first truly bad year that Seattle has. Because last year, you can't really count last year as a bad year. Russ got hurt. He then tried to play through the injury early. I know he wasn't quote-unquote injured, but you can't tell me that his broken finger healed in 3 weeks. My wife broke her finger. It took her about 2 months to be able to use her finger the right way. So 8 weeks seems about right. Imagine that. About 6-8 weeks after the injury occurred, he started to play a little bit better towards the end of the season. The Seahawks won some games, and then they ended it with a respectable record. That won't be the case this year because they do not have that Hall of Fame level quarterback coming back. They have Drew Lock. And even if Drew Lock is twice as good as he was with the Broncos, he's still outside of the top 15 in terms of how good of a quarterback he is. And you're not winning a championship without a top 3 defense, top 3 special teams, if you don't have a top 15 quarterback. Hell, you're not winning a division without having a top 10 quarterback and having a top 10 defense and special teams. And they're not going to have any of those things this year. And so do I think they win the division? No. Do I think they might be able to play spoiler or upset some of the divisional opponents that they play at the end of this season? Maybe. But again, probably not. I think if you're going to see any kind of upsets, you're going to see them the first couple weeks of the season when teams are still trying to figure out what the hell they're going to do with Drew Lock, including themselves. But, we'll see what happens. So, with all that being said, we've talked about the 49ers. We've talked about the Cardinals. We've talked about the Rams. We've talked about the Seahawks. You might be asking, well, what the hell do you think the division is going to look like then? Well, fake person, let me go ahead and tell you. I think the Seahawks are going to be last in the division at 6-11. And 6 was being kind. I almost said 4-13. The Seahawks are a bad team. It's okay to be bad every once in a while. Use this as a rebuilding year. Build yourself back up better. Get a better quarterback next year. And let's move on. And hell, they may start the season with Jimmy G. That may be something that ends up happening if Jimmy G is cut from the 49ers, which changes his entire system. I think with Jimmy G, they could potentially go 9-7. Or 9-8. But as currently constituted, 6-11 feels right. So that leaves the last 3 teams, which I think we all expected to be the last 3 teams in this division, and going from 1 to 3. And so with the third team, I'm going with Arizona. But Arizona takes a step back from last year. They don't win 11 games. They don't win 10. Hell, they don't even win 9. They win 7. They go 7-10. I think losing D-Hop, not having a true number 1 wide receiver, because Hollywood Brown is not a true number 1 wide receiver, is going to hurt. And so I think without having him the first half of the year, they kind of struggle. And then they get off after he gets back. They struggle a couple games into him coming back. But then ultimately they rebound and finish the season well, which is different than the way that they've ended seasons in the past. But ultimately, I think this is a down year for them. Does Cliff get fired? I'm not sure. We can have that discussion more closer to the end of the season if this is what happens. But it's on the board. I mean, a very, very bad playoff game last year. 2 years before that of playoff or of into season swoons and missing playoffs after hot starts. It's on the board that he's been pretty bad to mediocre at best for 4 years and that they move on. And so that leaves the last two teams, San Francisco and the Rams. I think both teams go 12-5 this year. And I know what you're saying, but Alex, that's a rookie quarterback. Yeah, but it's not a rookie staff. And it's not a rookie defense. And they have one of the best athletes in the entire league. And the Rams are the Rams. Rams stay the champs. I think they struggle out the gate. They have a pretty tough schedule the first 5-6 weeks of the season. But after that, I think they go on like a 7-game win streak before they play the Packers. And I think that's what really drives them to being at 12-5. The problem is, in those first 6 games, they play the 49ers twice, and I think the 49ers win both of those games, meaning that the Rams do not win the NFC South, or NFC West. Instead, the Rams will be the second team in the NFC West at 12-5. San Francisco will be the winners of the West at 12-5. Arizona 7-10. Seattle 6-11. That's your NFC West. What that also means is that we've completed all 4 of the NFC divisions. So if you've been following along with us, you know exactly who I think is going to be in the playoffs. Question is what's seeding going to look like? Well, I think the 1 seed is the Packers. I think that 12-5, they've managed to get themselves there. They'll hold the tiebreaker due to conference record over the 49ers, who are also going to be at 12-5. So the Niners will be the 2 seed. At that point, the Eagles, because I said they'd be 11-6, would be the 3 seed. Now, if Carson Wentz comes back and he wins the division, they would be the 4 seed as the Commanders. But as of right now, I have the Eagles as the 3 seed, and then the Bucs as the 4 at 10-7. However, the Julio Jones move, adding to the Bucs after we did our rankings, might move them up 1 game. I got to truly decide that before we talk about playoff stuff. But as of right now, the Bucs would be the 4, the Eagles would be the 3. And then that gets to our wild card teams, right? So your 5 is obviously the Rams. They're 12-5. Your 6 is the Vikings. At 11-6, the Vikings will make the playoffs. And then your final team into the playoffs right now at 10-7 because of Jameis Winston would be the New Orleans Saints. And so your playoff matchups would be the Niners and the Saints, the Eagles and the Vikings, and the Rams and the Bucs. That's a hell of an NFC West or NFC divisional or wild card round. Wow, a lot of problems in that statement. That would be your NFC wildcard round, and boy, is that a doozy. So, with that being said, that does end our show today. I want to thank everybody for being here with us. Remember to like, review, rate, subscribe, share, all the fun stuff. We are on our way to trying to get to 20 viewers per episode by the 20th episode. We're halfway into that right now, and we're on a great trajectory. I want to thank all the new listeners that have made it to the end of this episode. Thank you for being here. We love having you. Again, we're going to be with the gamer, KC Mito, on Monday, August 1st. Find us on the socials. Find him on the socials. He's doing a giveaway, 6 to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. And I just want to know one thing. Am I a genius? Or am I just crazy? Have a great